Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on behalf of a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Friday, July 8th, 2022. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide, you can go to weather.gov. That's the National Weather Service's online present. It'll bring you to an interactive point-and-click map that can give you forecast watches and warnings for anywhere in the country. Looking at this Friday afternoon's map, the most interesting feature in the lower 48, excessive heat and heat advisories, the middle lower Mississippi Valley across the southern U.S. Also, more severe thunderstorms, they're expected in western half of Montana, and red flag warnings in eastern Nevada and western Utah. And speaking of red flag warnings, and dense smoke advisories, they continue for the same areas of the interior now through midnight Sunday night. And thunderstorms are also going to be redeveloping Sunday west and south of the Alaska Range, westward toward Bethel in the southwest interior and down through the Talkeetna Mountains and the Copper River Basin, so keep that in mind. And a round of rain will be moving across the Panhandle later Saturday night into Sunday, associated with front attached to low pressure that's going to be working its way through the Gulf. But overall, it looks like we could see a pattern change by mid-month, later next week and next weekend, the beginning of cooler and maybe occasionally wet weather for much of the state. Not soaking kind of rains that would alleviate widespread fire danger issues, but enough at least to get a little relief and tamp down the excessive fire danger that we've seen for such a long time now. Red flag warnings in effect until midnight Sunday night. Areas around Tanana through Fairbanks, Northway, Eagle, Fort Yukon, and the main problem being isolated to scattered thunderstorms that could initiate lightning strikes that cause new fires. Also, the smoke there should be increasing. There was a little lull in the smoke last night and earlier this Friday morning, but we expect the smoke levels to go back up across the interior. Looking a little further westward toward Ruby in the central interior, Scott, you can see a bit of that haze there, but there are also a few cumulus clouds beginning to pop, and that area will have a better chance of seeing some thunderstorms developing over the weekend as temperatures are going to warm up again, back up around or even into the 80s. Certainly 80s, a few spots near 90 in the east central interior, as long as you get the sun. Further south, though, low pressure near Kodiak Island is producing rain and fog, 55 degrees. That moisture has spread up the coast all the way through Homer, Seward, and Whittier, where they're going to get a pretty good soaking. Looking at the Alaska Interagency Coordination Center dashboard for the fire situation, over 240 active fires across the state right now. And we are now working on nearly 2.5 million of acres of forest and tundra consumed this fire season. And a quick check of the fire weather update for this Friday, according to the predictive services of the AICC. High pressure, ridge of high pressure keeps that interior hot and dry up even in the northern areas, especially along the Brooks Range. And scattered thunderstorms this weekend equals more fire starts. Southern Alaska could see some scattered showers and storms beginning Sunday, but they would be of a wetter variety, so hopefully it doesn't cause much in the way of any fire starts. Multiple days of wetting rains are needed to really knock down this really dangerous fire situation. However, it's not going to happen right away. Next week we could see some cooler weather, little damper conditions here and there, but overall we will see very high fire danger persist at least through the early and middle parts of next week across the interior and perhaps the Copper River Basin. And the fire danger expected on Saturday, July 9th, is focused there on the central interior, just north of the Alaska Range, the Tanana lower valley, and on up through the Yukon Flats. Those are the areas that are going to have the hottest temperatures, 80s. A few spots could approach 90, along with isolated to scattered thunderstorms redeveloping in the late afternoon and evening hours. One other final thing. We're approaching the noctilucent cloud season. Noctilucent clouds are beautiful. They're electric blue. They appear at twilight. They're the Earth's highest cloud, 50 miles above the surface. They're only seen in high latitudes, north or south latitudes, in the summer months. Alaska's best time for viewing is late July into early August because we got to get just the right sun angle. It's that time of year we start transitioning back to having more in the way of some darkness starting to materialize. But keep that in mind here later this month. Keep your eyes peeled. Satellite imagery shows low pressure circulation near Kodiak Island, occluded front extending east into the Gulf. More scattered storms redeveloping over northwest Canada and beginning to pop there east of Fairbanks. Again, they'll increase as we go through the early and mid-evening. And eventually another piece of energy currently working its way through the central Aleutians is going to slide eastward and help energize the system and bring in some more rain into the Panhandle over the weekend. So we have the one low, but notice another low there southwest of it in the North Pacific. And by the time we get into Saturday, that low is going to kind of dumbbell around the one that's south of Kodiak Island, and that's going to be the next round of better rain that moves into the Panhandle later this weekend. To the north, areas of smoke and scattered storms will continue to keep that fire threat going. And again, with more lightning up there across the interior, there'll likely be more fire starts. Low temperatures Saturday morning, lower 50s across much of the Panhandle, southern areas, and then temperatures confined to the 60s, lower 60s there in the Panhandle, clouds and some light showers. 60s southern coastal interior, but 80 up there toward McGrath. Lows again, lower 50s Panhandle, upper 40s, lower 50s through south central areas. Maybe a little warmer there with a chance of a scattered shower thunderstorm, Glen Allen, Talkeetna, McGrath. Interior Valley, warm 50s there, the Yukon River. Look at those 80s again on Saturday, helping to boost that fire danger. Upper 40s, near 50 along the Gulf, or I should say northern Arctic coast. And then lows again, mild side 50s to even near 60, Yukon Flats, Fairbanks. And Sunday afternoon, once again, temperatures getting well into the 80s there, the mid and upper Yukon Valley toward the Alcan. And finally, the southwest lows will generally be in the 50s as we go up the Yukon and Kuskokwim River basins, 40s, mid-upper 40s, the peninsula down through the Aleutians. We'll start to see some 80-degree readings there, McGrath up toward Ruby, Galena. And then on Sunday morning, lows generally in the 50s in the interior, 40s as we extend out across the peninsula and the Aleutians. And then Sunday afternoon, maybe with some scattered storms there in parts of the southwest interior and central interior that keep temperatures down, mid-70s to a few spots near 80 degrees. And taking a look at the pattern change coming up, this is a Climate Predictions 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, which takes us to the middle of the month and just beyond. There is going to be kind of an enhancement to below normal temperatures centered there, the western central interior. And we expect this to gradually unfold as we go through next week and into next weekend into the following week after that. Overall, though, we're seeing the potential for much of the state to finally see temperatures that are going to average below normal, with the greatest likelihood being there through the west. Now, precipitation, nothing really of a super wet pattern, but precipitation could average slightly above normal across the northeastern two-thirds of the mainland in through the Panhandle, with the southwest and the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians averaging near normal. We still have a long ways to go to get some really soaking rains to help really put down this fire season, so stay tuned.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's check out the aviation weather. If you have a flight planned this weekend, Saturday or on Sunday, we're going to continue to see areas of smoke, scattered thunderstorms enhancing the fire danger, and as a result, red flag warnings continuing through Saturday late evening, early overnight for much of the east central interior this weekend, along with areas of smoke, widespread IFR conditions across the Gulf. There's an area of low pressure located near Kodiak Island, and that feature is going to just kind of sit there waiting for another piece of energy to cut across the lower Bering, central Aleutians, and then swing up across the North Pacific, and that's going to help push another round of steadier rain into the Panhandle on Sunday. But for Saturday afternoon, look for those scattered storms to redevelop late afternoon in through the evening, with areas of smoke, especially north and west of the Alaska Range, all the way up past the Brooks Range. And IFR conditions there along the at least Gulf Coast open waters. And then for Sunday morning, areas of smoke continue there across the interior. IFR along sections of the Alaska Range, western and central Alaska Range, and out over much of the Gulf, as well as up along just off the Arctic and northwest coast down through the Bering Strait and covering much of the Bering. Sunday afternoon, still expect some isolated scattered storms redeveloping because of low pressure there in the Gulf. There's going to be a ridge of high pressure off to the north that's going to build back toward the southwest, allowing for a few more storms to even reach further south and west into the southwest interior. Anaktuvik Pass should generally see VFR conditions on Saturday, but an isolated storm and smoke will be there in vicinity. Same thing with Adigan Pass, smoke in vicinity along with an isolated storm possibly developing there later afternoon and evening. Lake Clark and Merrill passes should start out MVFR, becoming VFR. Rainy Pass, look for VFR conditions early in the morning, becoming MVFR as the day wears on, some cumulus buildups. And then Windy Pass, we are looking for VFR conditions becoming IFR. And the best chance of smoke and thunderstorms will be as you fly north of the north entrance. Same thing at Isabel Pass. VFR in the morning becoming MVFR, but as you fly further north of the north entrance, areas of smoke and an isolated to scattered storm possible. And that'll be repeated again there. And Tasta, generally VFR becoming MVFR with the better chance of smoke and an isolated storm as you fly north. Tanita Pass, generally VFR conditions becoming MVFR. Portage Pass will be a split. We're going to see VFR conditions on the west entrance, MVFR conditions along the east entrance, pretty much holding through the day. And then Chilkoot and White, we do expect MVFR conditions to prevail there in the far north end of the Panhandle on Saturday. Freezing levels aloft are highest there across the northeastern portion of the state into northwest Canada and the Canadian Arctic coast, generally above 10,000 feet. We see the above or aloft freezing levels come down to below 6,000 feet there just to the east and southeast of Kodiak Island in the lower southwestern Gulf in response to that area of low pressure that's sitting there. And for icing, the greatest potential for icing will exist along the east side of the Kenai Peninsula and perhaps parts of Kodiak Island, as that low pressure sits again just near in the vicinity of Kodiak Island, and some considerable moderate icing could occur mainly between 10,000 and a flight level of 18,000 feet. The scattered storms again being possible there across much of northwest Canada back into the Alaskan interior. Upper level jet stream winds, there is a 105 knot wind max moving west to east along the Gulf North Pacific interface. And as we come down to 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, we see the low circulation just south of Kodiak Island. 35 knot winds coming across easterly, 35 knot winds across Lake Iliamna, and then curving back down in the southeast corner there of the Bering across the tip there of the Alaska Peninsula. And then as we bring it down to 3,000 feet, that low pressure circulation remains, and we do see easterly 40 knot winds at least across the northern half there of the Alaska Peninsula, turning toward the northeast and north as you get down toward the tip of the peninsula into the far eastern Aleutians and there southward. And so this is going to translate to the potential for some considerable moderate turbulence over a good chunk of Cook Inlet, the entrance of Cook Inlet, the eastern Kenai, southern at least areas of Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, the southwest, Lake Iliamna. On the east end of that, surface to 6,000 feet. The turbulence on the back end there in the southwest will be surface to 4,000 feet. So that is your aviation weather. If you are going to head out, make sure to check the latest conditions and forecast. And if you do manage to get in the air, have a safe flight.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD,
the global scale observations of the Limon-Disk instrument,
to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons,
And the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites.
What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes,
allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space
around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to the show, and let's take a look at the sea ice edge as we conclude things. A lot of open water there through the lower Chukchi Sea and along the northwest coast, including Kotzebue Sound. Along the Arctic coast, Utqiagvik eastward through Prudhoe Bay and Kaktovik, the ice is still there in place, but it continues to melt off, and we expect that going in here through the course of midsummer. As far as the southeast panhandle, southerly winds upwards to 20 knots. Waves a couple of feet there in the vicinity of Petersburg, upwards to 4 feet in through Lynn Canal and Dixon Entrance. Outer coast, southeasterly winds to 20 knots, waves 7 to 8 feet. On Sunday, we'll see 30-knot southeast winds there around Ketchikan, Metlakatla, with rain and 8-foot waves. Falling off to 10-knot winds and 2-foot waves in Lynn Canal. And then along the outer coast, 30-knot southeast winds off of Craig and Sitka with 10-foot waves. Winds turn more easterly, 25 knots there, Sitka northward through Yakutat, and waves 8-9 feet. For the northwestern Gulf, easterly winds off the Kenai and south of Cordova to 25 knots, waves around 9 feet. Generally northeast to north winds through Cook Inlet, waves as high as 5 feet near the entrance, and in Prince William Sound, northeast winds 15 knots and waves 3 feet. Things settle down a bit more, a little more variable winds on Sunday. Variable winds 10 knots in Prince William Sound, 2-foot waves. Also variable winds around 10 knots with 3-foot waves at the entrance of Cook Inlet. Winds turn more southwesterly by afternoon at 10 knots, which is common with the onshore sea breeze in the afternoon with waves there of 3 feet. Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, northeast winds 30 knots. We have low pressure just south of there. Winds turning northeast to north on the Bering side to 20 knots. Waves 4 feet from Bristol Bay down to north of Cold Bay. Northwest winds 20 knots and 5 to 6 foot waves on the North Pacific side. For Sunday, winds will be southwesterly, 20 knots through Shelikof Strait, waves 4 feet. The rest of the region, generally west winds around 15 knots, waves running 5-6 feet on the North Pacific side and 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side. For Saturday, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots or so there through the eastern Aleutians, waves 5 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side and 3 to 4 feet on the Bering side, and further west, Atka, Adak toward Kiska, variable winds at 10 knots and waves just a few feet. For Sunday, we'll see westerly winds turn more southwesterly as we get west of Nikolsky through Atka and Adak and pick up upwards to 20 to 25 knots, waves generally running 4 to 6 feet. And along the southwest coast, variable winds there at St. Matthew, 10 knots, waves 5 feet. North winds in the vicinity of Nunavik Island, waves running a few feet. And then north winds 15 knots through Norton Sound and waves 3 feet. For Sunday, winds become more southerly out over the eastern Bering, picking up to 25 knots there south of St. Lawrence down through St. Paul and St. Matthew with waves 7 to 8 feet. Northwest winds coming into Norton Sound at 10 knots and waves 3 feet. And then finally, the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait, look for south winds 15 knots, picking up a bit to 20 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea, waves generally 4 feet. Arctic coast winds will generally have a northeasterly component, trying to turn southeastward there at Utqiagvik. But again, there still is some melting ice there in place. And on Sunday, south winds continue through the Bering Strait and lower Chukchi Sea, starting 25 knots there north of Nunavik Island, falling off to 15 knots as we get further north there of Point Ley. And generally east winds there along the eastern Arctic coast at 10 knots. There's still some ice in place, and again, not much there in the way of any wave action. But for Saturday's surface weather map, we have the one weakening low south of Kodiak Island as another one moves across eastward through the North Pacific, just south of the Gulf. And an occluded front will bring some rain showers into the Panhandle Saturday, with another round, though, of more widespread rain, especially the southern two-thirds of the Panhandle, come Sunday. And we can expect scattered showers and storms across the interior, along with more smoke. Red flag warnings remain in effect for the interior until midnight Sunday night. There also could be some scattered showers and storms developing south of the Alaska Range and west of the Alaska Range, to include parts of the southwest interior around Bethel, as well as through the Talkeetna and mountains and the Copper River Basin. So that wraps up our show for this Friday evening. Thank you for watching, and have yourself a wonderful weekend.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.